Dependency risks usually enter long before your code ever runs. Teams often pull open source packages and base images directly from public registries without knowing what's actually inside them. And research showed that 1 in 8 contain known vulnerabilities. I'm Myrna from Harness, and I've seen vulnerable or malicious dependencies make it into production far too easily. In this video, I'll show you how Artifact Registry's Dependency Firewall blocks risky dependencies before they ever enter your pipeline. So here's my setup. This is our Artifact Registry landing page. This actually serves as a single source of truthful artifacts across the organization. Now, Dependency Firewall specifically applies to proxy registries. That just when developers pull open source packages from public repositories, they're not going directly to something like Maven Central, they're pulling from Harness. Now, Harness in that sense then becomes this controlled gateway for all of their open source dependencies, giving visibility, governance, and enforcement right at the point of ingest. Now let's look at it from UI standpoint. So here you can see all open source dependencies that have been evaluated against policies and have had some sort of violation, whether that's blocked or warning. The first thing you'll do is to filter by enforcement status. Let's click on blocked. Now we're looking specifically at dependencies that were blocked at ingest. So these are packages that violated a policy, whether it was due to critical vulnerability, a restricted license, a package age, or another rule. So let's say a developer attempted to pull this specific package. You can actually see all of the vulnerability details, the severity levels, the threshold, the license information, the specific policy that it triggered. And you can clearly see that this package was blocked, and also know why it was blocked. Here you see that this triggered the firewall license as well as the firewall security, and it's because the score was greater than the threshold and it was a critical severity responsible for blocking this. So instead of discovering all of this later during a scan or an audit, the developer immediately knows this dependency isn't allowed. Now, if I switch over to warn, these are packages that triggered policy conditions that were configured as informational. And this really just gives organizations flexibility and as advisory where appropriate. So if you're thinking about these policies and what exactly the policy means, they're actually just OPA-based policies. So I'm going to go into security and governance and take a look at the policies. So Dependency Firewall comes with out-of-the-box policies. We have a license policy and a security policy that it comes with. And you can actually take a look, for example, at this license policy where it specifically checks the list of allowed licenses. For example, GPL might not be allowed and blocks any dependency with a GPL license so that the developer doesn't pull that in and start using that. Now, what's powerful is that this isn't just UI based. Developers can validate dependencies locally using the CLI before even committing code. Here, I'm actually configuring my NPM client to route through Harness's upstream proxy. And from this point forward, open source pulls go through Harness. Great. And I have my project set up here already. Say I want to audit this yarn lockfile before pushing code. So this is actually going to evaluate all the dependencies against our firewall policies, and developers get immediate feedback even before CI runs. So we see there are 23 blocked dependencies, 7 allowed dependency. That's great. I know now what's blocked and what's not, but it's still not fully useful. Now let's say I want to understand why one of these specific packages was blocked. So this actually explains the vulnerability of this specific package and tell me why was it blocked. Okay, so I see that it violated the firewall security policy. It gives me exactly what this is. It also gives me the specific score and what the threshold was. This is an example of enforcement that may be license related. And here again, it tells you exactly what the rule was and why it was violated and what the allowed licenses were. Another thing that we can do is that we can even enforce policies like package age, for example, by blocking very new packages that may not be trusted yet. So right here, it says that this was blocked because of firewall H policy, and this has been within the first 90 days. So you don't know if you can actually trust this package. And all of this happens at ingest. So we're not reacting to all of these risky dependencies after they've built into artifacts. We're preventing them before they even enter the system in the first place. So this gives you true shift left open source governance, reduced compliance risk, and downstream rework in CI or production. And that's how Dependency Firewall quickly stops supply chain risk from entering your pipeline. So instead of reacting after a vulnerability is deployed, you control what dependencies are allowed in the first place. If you want to reduce dependency risk without slowing teams down, check out the link below. Thanks for watching.